I woke up from major surgery completely alone, and while I was lying in that recovery room with no one to take me home, my entire family was raising champagne glasses at my sister's brunch, posting photos with the caption "Family First." That was the day I realized I'd spent 32 years being the backup plan in my own family's life, and I decided, right there in that hospital bed, that I was done. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to where this really started, because the thing about being the forgotten child is that it doesn't happen all at once. It's 1,000 tiny cuts that you don't even realize are bleeding you dry until one day you look down and wonder why you're standing in a pool of your own blood. My name is Claire, and I'm what my mother always called the strong one. You know what that really means? It means you're the child who learned early that your needs come second, so you stopped having them altogether. I have an older sister, Vanessa, golden gorgeous, perpetually in some kind of crisis that requires the entire family's attention. And then there's my younger brother, Josh, who somehow managed to stay neutral in all of this by just keeping his head down and going along with whatever kept the peace. Growing up, I learned to read the room. I was 8 years old at my school play, the one where I had the lead role, the one I'd practiced for months. I was going to be Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz, and I was so excited I could barely sleep for a week. I remember standing backstage in those ruby slippers, peeking through the curtain, scanning the audience for my parents. They'd promised they'd be in the third row center. I found the third row. I found the center seats. They were empty. What I didn't know, what I wouldn't find out until I got home that night still wearing my Dorothy dress, was that Vanessa had a meltdown 2 hours before my play. She was 11, and she'd convinced herself she was terrible at piano and couldn't possibly go to her recital that evening. So my parents stayed home with her, comforting her, telling her how talented she was, how special, how loved. My grandmother came to my play instead and told me I was wonderful, but I could see it in her eyes. That sadness. That recognition of a pattern I was too young to name. I told myself it was fine. One play. It didn't matter. Vanessa needed them more. I was strong. I was okay. That became my mantra. I'm okay. I'm fine. I don't need anything. And the more I said it, the more my family believed it, and the more they believed it, the more true it became, until I'd architected my own invisibility. College graduation. I was 21, summa cum laude, about to give a speech as class representative. My parents drove 6 hours to be there. They sat through the ceremony. They took photos. We went to dinner. And then, halfway through the appetizers, Vanessa called. She'd just broken up with her boyfriend of 3 months. She was devastated. She couldn't be alone. My mother's face did that thing it always did, that flicker of calculation, that split second where she decided which daughter needed her more. I already knew the answer. "Honey, I'm so sorry," my mother said, putting her phone down, "but we need to get back. Vanessa really needs us right now. You understand, don't you?" It wasn't a question. It was a script we'd performed 100 times. My line was always the same, of course. "I understand. Go. I'm fine." And I delivered it perfectly, like I always did. They left before dessert. I sat in that restaurant alone, with a slice of congratulations cake I couldn't taste, and told myself that this was just how it was. Some people are the priority. Some people are the backup plan. I was the backup plan. I could live with that. Or so I thought. Because here's what I didn't understand yet: you can convince yourself you're okay with being second choice, right up until the moment you realize you're not even on the list at all. Fast forward to last year. I'm 32, I have a career I've worked my ass off for, a life I've built entirely on my own because I learned early that depending on anyone meant disappointment. And I get news from my doctor that I need surgery. Not emergency, life or death surgery, but not minor either. I had a benign tumor that needed to be removed, and the recovery wasn't going to be easy. 6 weeks of limited mobility, no driving for 2 weeks. Someone needed to pick me up from the hospital because they wouldn't release me alone. I told my family a month in advance. I sent a text to the family group chat, the one that usually blows up with messages about Vanessa's latest business venture or Josh's girlfriend or my parents' vacation plans. I typed, "Hey everyone, I have surgery scheduled for March 15th at 7 a.m. It's at St. Mary's Hospital. They said I'll need someone to drive me home afterward. Can someone be there?" 3 thumbs up emojis. That was it. But I counted those thumbs as promises. Mom, Dad, Josh. They'd be there 2 weeks before my surgery. Vanessa announced she was hosting a promotional brunch for her lifestyle brand. She'd been building this Instagram business for 2 years, selling everything from wellness products to motivational journals, and she'd finally landed a partnership with a boutique that wanted to feature her products. This brunch was going to be her big debut, her chance to network with influencers and local business owners. She'd rented a beautiful venue, hired a photographer, ordered custom floral arrangements. It was a big deal for her, and I was genuinely happy. I even helped her design the invitations. Then I saw the date. March 15th, 10 a.m., the same morning as my surgery. I felt something drop in my stomach, but I pushed it down. It was fine. The surgery was at 7. I'd be out of recovery by 9, maybe 9:30. Someone could pick me up and still make most of the brunch. It would be tight, but it was doable. Everything was fine. The first text came from my mother 5 days before the surgery. "Claire, honey, I know your surgery is the same day as Vanessa's brunch. I think it's better if I go support your sister. This is really important for her business, and you'll have nurses there with you. You understand, right?" I stared at that message for 10 minutes. You understand, right? That phrase. That familiar, loaded phrase that wasn't really a question but a demand for my complicity in my own abandonment. I typed back, "I need someone to drive me home. The hospital requires it." She responded immediately, "Can't you take an Uber? Or ask a friend? Vanessa really needs the family there for this." A friend. She wanted me to ask a friend to pick me up from surgery while my entire family attended my sister's brunch. The thing about being the forgotten child is that moments like these don't shock you anymore. They just confirm what you already knew. Before we continue, if you're enjoying this story, please hit that subscribe button and tell me in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is there. I see every single comment, and it means the world to me. Thank you so much for your support. Now back to the story. My father texted next, "Your mother told me about the conflict. I think I should support your sister too. You're tough, Claire. You've always been so independent. You'll be fine." Josh was the last holdout. He called me, and I could hear the guilt in his voice. "I'm really sorry, Claire. Mom and Dad are pressuring me to go to the brunch. They think it'll look bad if we're not all there for Vanessa. Maybe I could come to the hospital after." After the brunch. After the networking and the photos and the champagne. After Vanessa got what she needed. I could have the leftovers of his attention. I said what I always said, "It's okay. I understand. Go." But this time, when I hung up the phone, something felt different. That familiar ache of being second choice had shifted into something harder, colder. Something that felt almost like clarity. The morning of March 15th, I drove myself to the hospital at 6 a.m. I checked myself in. I filled out the paperwork alone. I sat in pre-op alone. When the nurse asked if someone was coming to be with me, I smiled and said, "They'll be here." I was still performing. Still playing my role. Still pretending I was okay with being the one who didn't matter. But when I woke up from surgery 3 hours later, groggy and nauseous and disoriented, and that same nurse asked again if someone was coming to take me home, I finally told the truth. "No. No one's coming." She looked at me with this mixture of pity and concern that I couldn't stand, and I realized this was it. This was the moment I'd been building toward my entire life. The moment where I had to decide if I was going to keep playing the role of the strong one, the understanding one, the one who didn't need anything, or if I was finally going to admit that I'd been bleeding out for 32 years and nobody had even noticed. I took an Uber home. I sat in the back seat of a stranger's car, still in my hospital gown under my coat, holding a bag of post-op instructions and pain medication, and I pulled out my phone. The family group chat was exploding with messages. Photos from Vanessa's brunch. My mother in a beautiful dress, beaming. My father with his arm around Vanessa. Josh laughing with a group of Vanessa's influencer friends. And Vanessa, radiant in the center of it all, with a caption that made my blood run cold. "Couldn't have done this without my amazing family. Family first, always. Family first." I screenshot that post. I don't even know why. Maybe I needed proof. Maybe I needed evidence that this wasn't all in my head, that I wasn't being dramatic or oversensitive or any of the other things I'd been told whenever I tried to express that something was wrong. There it was in pixels and hashtags, proof that my family could show up, they just couldn't show up for me. When I got home to my empty apartment, something inside me made a decision. Not a dramatic decision. Not a vengeful decision. Just a quiet, final decision. I was done. Done performing understanding. Done shrinking myself to make room for everyone else's needs. Done being the backup plan. I didn't know what that meant yet or what it would look like, but I knew with absolute certainty that I would never again pretend I was okay with being forgotten. What I didn't know, what I couldn't have known in that moment, was that this decision would lead me to book a non-refundable vacation to Europe scheduled exactly during my sister's delivery 5 years later, and that single act would finally force my family to confront the question they'd been avoiding my entire life. What does it cost to always choose one child over the other, and who's been paying that price all along? The first thing I did after that surgery wasn't dramatic. I didn't send an angry text. I didn't write a confrontational email. I didn't call a family meeting to air my grievances. What I did was far more terrifying to them, though they wouldn't realize it for months. I simply stopped reaching out. And in a family where I'd always been the one bending, the one accommodating, the one making sure everyone else felt comfortable, my silence was deafening. 3 days after my surgery, my mother called. I let it ring. She left a voicemail. Hi honey, just checking in on you. Hope the recovery is going well. Vanessa's brunch was such a success. She got 3 new partnership offers. Anyway, call me back when you can. I listened to that voicemail 4 times, analyzing every word like it was evidence in a trial. Not one apology. Not one acknowledgement that maybe, just maybe, they should have been there. Just an update on Vanessa's success and a casual assumption that I was fine because I was always fine. I called her back 2 days later. My voice was pleasant, neutral, the vocal equivalent of a polite smile. Hey mom, sorry I missed your call. Recovery's fine. That's great news about Vanessa. The conversation lasted 4 minutes. She asked how I was feeling. I said fine. She told me more about the brunch. I made appropriate sounds of interest. When we hung up, she probably felt like everything was normal. But I knew something had fundamentally shifted. I'd answered her call, but I hadn't invited her in. And for someone who'd spent 32 years with the door wide open, that was revolutionary. Here's what nobody tells you about setting boundaries with family. They don't notice at first. They're so used to you being available, being understanding, being flexible, that when you start pulling back, they just assume you're busy. It takes them weeks, sometimes months, to realize that you haven't just gotten busy, you've gotten distant. And by the time they notice, you're already so far gone that coming back would require crossing a bridge you've burned behind you. Week 2 of recovery, Josh texted asking if I could help him move into his new apartment that weekend. The old Claire would have said yes despite just having major surgery. The new Claire typed back, still recovering, can't lift anything heavy. Good luck with the move. He sent back a thumbs up. No follow-up question about how I was doing. No offer to come help me instead. Just acceptance that I wasn't available, and that was that. Week 3, Vanessa called asking if I could design some graphics for her business Instagram. She was swamped, and I was so good at that stuff. I told her I was behind on my own work because of the surgery recovery. She sighed, that particular sigh that meant I was being difficult, and said, okay, I'll figure it out. Then she added, almost as an afterthought, how are you feeling by the way? By the way. Like my surgery was a footnote in the story of her needs. I'm managing, I said. And I was. I was managing my expectations. Managing my availability. Managing the slow, careful extraction of myself from a family dynamic that had been suffocating me for 3 decades. Month 2, my mother invited me to Sunday dinner. I said I had plans. I didn't, but I was learning that no was a complete sentence. She called back an hour later. What plans? You always come to Sunday dinner. Always. That word hung in the air like an accusation. I'd always come to Sunday dinner because I'd always prioritized their schedule over mine, their comfort over my peace, their family over my sanity. I'm having dinner with a friend, I said. It wasn't a lie. I was having dinner with myself, and I was learning to be my own friend. Well, can't you reschedule? Vanessa's bringing her new boyfriend. It would be nice to have the whole family there. There it was again. The assumption that my life was movable, rearrangeable, less important than whatever was happening in Vanessa's world. I can't reschedule. Have a nice dinner, Mom. I hung up before she could negotiate. My hands were shaking. Saying no to my mother felt like jumping off a cliff. But here's the thing about cliffs: sometimes you don't fall. Sometimes you fly. By month 4, the questions started. Why are you being so distant? My mother asked during one of our increasingly brief phone calls. Distant. That was the word they'd chosen. Not unavailable or busy or independent. Distant. Like I'd moved to another country instead of just stopped volunteering for emotional labor I'd never been compensated for. I'm not being distant, Mom. I'm just living my life. And I was. For the first time in my adult life, I was building something that was entirely mine. I'd started therapy, which was where I first heard the term scapegoat child, and realized my family had a whole psychological pattern I could name. I'd started dating someone, a man named Ethan, who noticed within 3 dates that my family never asked about my life, only told me about theirs. I'd started investing in friendships that felt reciprocal, where people showed up for me the way I showed up for them. But here's what was happening in the background, the thing I couldn't see yet but that was brewing like a storm. My absence was creating space, and in that space, cracks were forming. Josh told me later that family dinners felt weird without me there. Not because they missed me specifically, but because I'd been the buffer, the neutral party, the one who smoothed over awkward moments and asked everyone about their lives. Without me, they had to actually talk to each other, and they were discovering they didn't know how. Year 1 post-surgery, I missed Thanksgiving. I told them 2 weeks in advance that I was going to Ethan's family celebration instead. You would have thought I'd announced I was joining a cult. My mother called me crying. How can you not come to Thanksgiving? We're your family. And I wanted to ask her, where was that family when I woke up alone from surgery? Where was that family during every school play and graduation and promotion dinner that got cancelled or cut short for Vanessa's latest crisis? But I didn't ask those questions because I'd learned that with people like my mother, those questions don't lead to understanding. They lead to justifications, excuses, reasons why every individual incident wasn't that bad, and I was overreacting by looking at the pattern instead of the parts. So I said simply, I'm having Thanksgiving with Ethan's family. I'll see you all another time. Another time. I was learning to be vague, non-committal, the same way they'd always been with me. Do you know what it's like to watch your family scramble to understand you when you stop being understandable? It's like watching someone solve a puzzle they didn't know existed. They kept trying to find the moment where things went wrong, the single incident they could point to and fix, not understanding that the whole foundation was cracked and one more apology couldn't seal 32 years of fractures. Before we continue, I need to ask you something. If you're invested in this story, if you want to know how this all plays out, hit that like button right now and drop a comment telling me, have you ever been the forgotten one in your family? The one who was always expected to understand? I read every single comment, and your stories matter to me. Okay, back to what happened next. Year 2, something unexpected occurred. Vanessa's business started struggling. The Instagram algorithm changed, her engagement dropped, partnership deals fell through. And suddenly, the golden child wasn't so golden anymore. She was stressed, overwhelmed, and for the first time in her life, she was facing real consequences that our parents couldn't fix with attention and emotional support. And you know what happened? They called me. Not to ask how I was, not to acknowledge that they'd been absent from my life for 18 months, but to ask if I could help Vanessa. My mother's exact words, I know you've been busy with your own life, but your sister really needs you right now. Can you give her some advice on her business? I sat with that phone call for a full minute of silence. This was the test. This was the moment where the old Claire would have swooped in, fixed everything, proven her worth through service and support. The new Claire said, I'm sure she'll figure it out. She's very capable. Claire, don't be like this. She's your sister. And I'm her sister. Did she check on me during my 6-week recovery? Did any of you? More silence. Then, that was over a year ago. Are you really still upset about that? Still upset. Like there was a statute of limitations on abandonment. Like hurt had an expiration date. I'm not upset, Mom. I'm just not available. There's a difference. Year 3, I got a promotion at work, a big one. 6-figure salary, corner office, a team of 12 people reporting to me. I posted about it on social media. Vanessa liked the post. Josh commented congrats. My parents called 3 days later. Why didn't you tell us about your promotion? My mother asked, and I could hear the hurt in her voice. I posted about it. I figured you'd see it. You know we don't check social media that often. You should have called us. Should have. That phrase they loved so much. I should have called them. I should have made sure they knew. I should have managed their feelings about my success the same way I'd managed their feelings about everything else my entire life. Well, now you know. I'm doing really well, Mom. Really well. And I was. Ethan and I had moved in together. His family had embraced me in a way that was almost disorienting. His mother actually remembered things I told her. His father asked about my work with genuine interest. His sister invited me to girls' nights not because she needed something, but because she enjoyed my company. I was learning what it felt like to be chosen, not tolerated. But here's where the story takes a turn, where all those years of quiet boundary setting were about to culminate in one decision that would blow up everything I'd carefully constructed. Year 4, at a family dinner I actually attended because it was my father's 70th birthday and even I couldn't justify missing that, Vanessa made an announcement. She was glowing, literally radiating joy, and when she stood up and clinked her glass, I knew what was coming before she said the words. We're pregnant. The table erupted. My mother started crying happy tears. My father hugged Vanessa's husband. Josh raised a toast. And I sat there feeling this complicated tangle of emotions, genuine happiness for my sister, because despite everything, I didn't wish her ill. But also a creeping dread, because I knew exactly what was coming next. I knew that this pregnancy was going to become the center of the family universe, the sun that we all orbited, and I was going to be expected to fall back into old patterns of availability and support. My mother turned to me, eyes shining. Isn't this wonderful? You're going to be an aunt. And then, without missing a beat, Vanessa will need so much help. Thank God you're organized and capable. You can help her plan the nursery, research baby products, maybe even take some time off when the baby comes to help out those first few weeks. There it was. Not a request. An assumption. The old script, handed to me like lines I was expected to memorize and perform. And in that moment, sitting at that dinner table, watching my family rearrange my life around Vanessa's needs without even asking if I was willing, I made a decision. I smiled. I congratulated Vanessa. I asked about her due date. October 15th. I filed that information away like evidence. And 3 days later, I opened my laptop and booked a 2-week vacation to Europe. Paris, Barcelona, the Amalfi Coast. Every place I'd ever dreamed of visiting. Non-refundable tickets. Non-refundable hotels. Departure date, October 13th. Return date, October 27th. I didn't tell anyone. Not yet. Because the thing about revenge isn't that it's hot-blooded and impulsive. Real revenge is cold, calculated, and it waits for exactly the right moment to reveal itself. I had 6 months until Vanessa's due date. 6 months to watch my family assume I would rearrange my life for them one more time. 6 months to let them build expectations I had no intention of meeting. And when the time came to tell them I wouldn't be there for the birth, that I'd be sipping wine on the Amalfi Coast instead of holding Vanessa's hand in the delivery room, they would finally have to answer the question they'd been avoiding since I was 8 years old. What happens when the strong one stops being strong? What happens when the understanding one stops understanding? What happens when the child you taught to need nothing finally takes you at your word and needs nothing from you ever again? The question I kept asking myself as the plane descended into Barcelona was this: when does self-preservation become selfishness, and does it even matter if everyone's already decided you're the villain? Because that's exactly what happened 3 months before I left for Europe, when I finally told my family I wouldn't be there for Vanessa's delivery. And what unfolded after that conversation changed everything I thought I knew about forgiveness, family, and whether some bridges are meant to stay burned. The question I kept asking myself as the plane descended into Barcelona was this: when does self-preservation become selfishness, and does it even matter if everyone's already decided you're the villain? Because that's exactly what happened 3 months before I left for Europe, when I finally told my family I wouldn't be there for Vanessa's delivery. And what unfolded after that conversation changed everything I thought I knew about forgiveness, family, and whether some bridges are meant to stay burned. It was a Sunday dinner, one of the rare ones I still attended. Vanessa was 7 months pregnant, glowing and enormous, talking about her birth plan with the kind of detail that made it clear she'd thought about every possible scenario except the one where I wasn't there. My mother was knitting a baby blanket. My father was assembling a crib in the garage. Josh was painting the nursery on weekends. Everyone had a role in the grand production of Vanessa's baby, and mine had been written without my consent: supportive sister, reliable backup, the one who would drop everything when labor started. "Claire," Vanessa said, reaching across the table to grab my hand, "I want you to be my birth partner. Marcus will be there, obviously, but I want you in the room too. You're so calm under pressure. You'll keep me grounded." She said it like it was an honor, a privilege she was bestowing on me. And maybe it was. But it was also an assumption that I would say yes, that I would clear my schedule, that I would be available because I was always available. I pulled my hand back gently. "I can't. I'll be in Europe." The table went silent. You know that moment in movies where the record scratches and everyone freezes? It was exactly like that, except the horror on their faces was real. My mother's knitting needles stopped mid-stitch. My father looked up from his phone. Josh's fork hovered halfway to his mouth. And Vanessa, oh Vanessa, looked at me like I'd just slapped her. "What?" she whispered. "Ethan and I booked a trip to Europe. We leave October 13th, back on the 27th. I won't be here for your due date." I said it calmly, matter-of-factly, like I was discussing the weather and not detonating a bomb in the middle of dinner. My mother found her voice first. "You booked a vacation during your sister's delivery? Claire, that's unthinkable. Babies rarely come exactly on their due date," I said. "She might deliver before I leave or after I get back." "But what if she doesn't?" my father said, his voice rising. "What if she goes into labor while you're gone? How could you do this?" And there it was. The question they'd been dancing around my entire life, finally spoken out loud. How could I do this? How could I prioritize myself over Vanessa? How could I choose my own life over my role as the supporting character in hers? The answer was simple, though I knew they wouldn't understand it. I could do this because I'd finally learned that setting myself on fire to keep everyone else warm wasn't love. It was self-destruction. "I can do this," I said quietly, "because it's my life. And I'm choosing to live it." Vanessa started crying, those pregnant woman tears that came fast and furious. "Why are you doing this to me? What did I do to deserve this?" And that question, that loaded question that reframed my boundaries as an attack on her, told me everything I needed to know. She genuinely believed my life was happening to her. My choices were about her. My absence was a punishment instead of a presence somewhere else. "Vanessa, I'm not doing anything to you. I'm taking a trip with my partner. That's all." "Cancel it," my mother demanded. "We'll pay for you to reschedule. You can go to Europe anytime. It's non-refundable. Then we'll cover the cost and you can rebook for after the baby comes. This is your niece or nephew we're talking about. Family comes first." Family first. There was that phrase again, the one from her Instagram post 5 years ago when they all chose Vanessa's brunch over my surgery. Family first, unless you're Claire. Then you come last, and you're supposed to be grateful for whatever scraps of attention fall from the table. "I'm not canceling," I said. "I'm not rescheduling. I'm going to Europe, and I'll meet the baby when I get back." Josh spoke up for the first time. "Claire, come on. This is really important. Can't you just..." "Just what?" I interrupted. "Just give up something I've been planning for months? Just rearrange my life around Vanessa's needs like I always have? Just pretend it doesn't matter that none of you showed up for my surgery 5 years ago?" The room went dead silent. Nobody had mentioned the surgery in 5 years. It had become the family's unspoken agreement, the thing we all knew but never acknowledged, like a body buried in the backyard that everyone pretended wasn't there. "That's what this is about," my mother said, her voice shaking with something between anger and hurt. "You're still holding on to that? Vanessa's brunch was important for her career. You said you understood." I said what you needed me to say. What I always say. That I'm fine, that I understand, that I don't need anything. But I needed you that day, Mom. I needed all of you, and you chose Vanessa's brunch over my surgery. So yes, this is about that. And about every school play, every graduation, every moment of my life that got cancelled or cut short because Vanessa needed something. I'm done apologizing for existing outside of her shadow. I stood up. Ethan, who'd been sitting beside me in supportive silence, stood with me. We're leaving now. I hope the rest of dinner is lovely. Vanessa, I genuinely hope you have a healthy baby. I'll see you all when I get back from Europe. We walked out. Behind us, I could hear my mother crying, my father arguing, Vanessa's shocked silence. And for the first time in my life, I didn't turn around. I didn't go back to fix it. I didn't manage anyone's emotions but my own. I just left. The next 2 months were brutal. My phone exploded with messages. My mother sent paragraphs about family obligation and forgiveness. My father called me selfish and ungrateful. Vanessa wrote a long text about how I was ruining the happiest time of her life. Josh was the only one who didn't attack me directly, but his silence felt like its own form of judgment. But here's what happened that I didn't expect. Josh came to my apartment one night, 2 weeks before I left for Europe. He looked exhausted, conflicted, like he'd been carrying something heavy and was finally ready to set it down. I need to tell you something, he said. And I need you to let me finish before you respond. I nodded. He took a breath. I've been watching this family my whole life, and I've never said anything because it was easier to just stay neutral. But you're right, Claire. About all of it. Mom and Dad have always put Vanessa first. They've always expected you to be okay with it. And I've been complicit by saying nothing. I'm sorry. I should have been there for your surgery. I should have stood up for you 100 times, and I didn't because I was a coward. I started crying, not from sadness but from relief. Someone finally saw it. Someone finally validated that I wasn't crazy, wasn't bitter, wasn't making it all up in my head. The pattern was real. Thank you, I whispered. You have no idea what it means to hear you say that. I told Mom and Dad the same thing last night, he said. I showed them old calendars, old photos. I made them look at the pattern. Dad got defensive. But Mom. He paused. Mom started crying. Really crying. She said she never realized. She thought Vanessa needed them more because she was more vocal about it, and you were always so independent. She didn't understand that she trained you to be independent by never showing up. It wasn't a full apology. It wasn't a guarantee that anything would change. But it was acknowledgement, and sometimes acknowledgement is where healing starts. I went to Europe. I posted photos from Paris, from Barcelona, from the cliffs of the Amalfi Coast. I looked happy because I was happy. Free. And on October 17th, while I was having dinner at a restaurant overlooking the Mediterranean, my phone buzzed. Vanessa had gone into labor. I stared at that text for a long time. Part of me felt guilt, that old familiar guilt that had ruled my life for 32 years. But a bigger part felt peace. Vanessa had Marcus. She had her in-laws. She had a doula. She had my parents and Josh. She had everything she needed. And I had the sunset over the Amalfi Coast and the life I'd chosen for myself. The baby was born healthy. A girl. They named her Sophie. When I got back to the States, I went to the hospital with a carefully chosen gift, a beautiful handmade baby blanket and a silver bracelet with Sophie's birthstone. Vanessa looked exhausted, beautiful, and when she saw me, her eyes filled with tears. I'm sorry, she said. For expecting you to give up your trip. For taking you for granted. Josh made us all look at things differently. I didn't see it before, but I see it now. I'm sorry too, I said, that I had to leave to make you notice. My mother was there, holding Sophie. She looked at me with red eyes. Can we start over? She asked. No, I said, and watched her face fall. We can't start over. But we can start from here, if you're willing to see me as I actually am instead of who you need me to be. She nodded. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't a fairy tale ending. But it was honest. And sometimes honest is better than happy. Over the next year, things changed slowly. My parents made more effort to include me, to ask about my life, to show up for my moments. Vanessa worked on reciprocity, actually asking about me instead of just talking about herself. Josh became the bridge he should have been all along. The family dinners were awkward sometimes, stilted, like we were all learning a new language. But they were trying. We were all trying. And me? I learned that boundaries aren't walls. They're property lines. They say, this is mine, that is yours, and we can visit each other's spaces with respect and invitation. I learned that you can love people and still not sacrifice yourself for them. I learned that being the strong one doesn't mean being the silent one. 6 months after Sophie was born, at her baptism, Vanessa pulled me aside. "Thank you," she said. "For what?" "For going to Europe. For showing me that the world doesn't revolve around me. Sophie deserves an aunt who knows her worth. I want to be a mother who teaches her daughter to have boundaries. You taught me that." I held my niece and thought about the woman I'd been 5 years ago, waking up alone from surgery. I thought about the woman I'd become, strong enough to choose myself without apology. And I realized that sometimes the greatest gift you can give your family is refusing to diminish yourself for their comfort. Because when you finally stand at your full height, you give everyone else permission to grow too. Now, I need you to do something for me. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever been the forgotten child, the understanding one, the strong one who is really just the silent one, I want you to leave a comment right now telling me, what boundary do you need to set? What version of Europe do you need to book? And if you're not ready to share that, then just tell me this: are you Team Claire or do you think she went too far? I genuinely want to know what you think because stories like this don't have easy answers, and your perspective matters. Hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and let's keep this conversation going. Because if there's one thing I've learned from Claire's story, it's that speaking up, setting boundaries, and choosing yourself isn't selfish. It's survival. And you deserve to survive too.